Hey guys, my name is Ali and I'm going to show you how to do some beginners painting exercises with acrylics, and we're going to paint some clouds. So I've got your basic primary colors and a couple of brushes, but one brush you're probably going to need is a fan brush. This one is going to be pretty essential to our second exercise. Also, in regards to the paint, I'm going to recommend a decent quality paint. Low quality stuff tends to not be as rich in color, be pretty translucent, and acrylic paint dries darker, and the better quality stuff is just going to be more true to that color from wet to dry. Also, really important, have a lot of white. I always run out. I think everyone does, so it's always good to have a lot. Other than that, let's begin. First one's a pretty easy scene. We want some nice, simple, soft, fluffy clouds. First things first, we're going to slap on some light blue. I use cerulean blue, and I just quickly covered that guy up. I was working quickly because we want that blue to be sort of semi-wet when we get to the cloud part, and acrylics do dry very quickly. If you can't work quickly, or you're working on like a larger scale, then consider investing in slow mediums and retarders, because they will just keep that paint alive for a bit longer. Oh, okay, little tip here. If you find that you've got that little patchy area where you can see where your brush has left the canvas, easy way to avoid that is to just follow through with your movements. Drag that brush all the way across in a sweeping, flicking motion, rather than just stopping short and just lifting your brush off. Like I have done a few times throughout this video, and we're going to ignore that because it is really hard to paint at an angle. My bad guys, I'm not being the best example. Cool, now while the paint is still wet, we want to go in with our dark blue, pop that up the top, and start sweeping your brush left to right, back and forth, and slowly move it downwards to get a nice gradual transition from light to dark. Just keep going back and forth, slowly down, until it sort of seamlessly blends in. And down the bottom, we are going to do the same thing with the white, but work it upwards. Cool, we're finally at the clouds. So I wanted to make this super easy, so we're just going to go in with white, no other colors. And I am using my filbert brush, which is that nice little ovally shaped brush. You just pick up a little bit of white with that, and we are going to paint some clouds going diagonally. With the brush, we're dabbing in those clouds and using a round sort of smooshing stroke to make that fluffy shape, but also blend that paint in with the blue to give it a bit of a translucent kind of look. We want some areas to be darker than others, so make sure not to use too much white paint and really just work it into that blue. So just those round motions with my paintbrush. We want to build up in certain places to make it look thicker and like overlapping areas of cloud, and just make sure you blend. Clouds are weird, random shapes, and sometimes we see little straggler pieces, so it's good to add those ones in too. I like to throw in a couple of little disjointed baby clouds because it just makes it look a little bit more realistic. establishing a light source is pretty important. It really adds dimension to the objects in your image. So what you want to do in this case is to pick which side of the cloud you want the light to bounce off of, and then add more white along those edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be dabbing that white into the edges of the cloud and blending it into the body of the cloud with that circular blending motion with my brush. Now clouds aren't just one flat shape, so we're going to create some volume by adding bits of white into the body and center of the cloud, and again blending it out and creating these peaks of the clouds in different areas. Cool, that's starting to look a lot more vibrant and interesting. So now I'm going to go in with a round shape brush. So that is the one with the sort of pointed end. And we want to use that one to create more volume even by adding in some more solid white paints to really make those clouds glow. And we're going to just add that in at those edges. We want to paint around the edges and the peaks that we've created, and it just really makes it stand out. Also, we can go in and make those little straggler baby clouds pop. Cool, that's looking pretty good. So to end the exercise, I am just going to add a few things into this scene because it is looking a little bit empty. So I'm going to go with some silhouettes because silhouettes are probably one of the easiest subject matter that you can throw in somewhere because you're not bogged down by all that detail. And I am just going to paint some stems with some little diamond shaped leaves and just fill up that little bottom half. All right, we're done. So let's move on to our next lot of clouds. So just like before, we are covering that area in that light blue, and then we're going to blend that dark blue at the top and that white at the bottom. For this exercise, it's totally cool and probably better if we just let that dry and then we're going to go in and paint those clouds. So I'm just going to take my white and I'm going to paint in those fluffy shapes of different sizes and then add a couple of those little disjointed baby clouds because I like those. You are probably going to have to go back in with the white in another layer or two just to make it more solid, because we want this white not to blend. We want it to stand out and just be a nice solid white. Okay, next I'm gonna mix up some blue, black, and white. We use a very tiny bit of black and blue and a lot of white, and we are creating this bluey gray color. Is there a more technical term for that? I don't know. Anyway, this is for the more shadowy areas of the clouds. So we want to work while that white is still wet, by the way. So we are going to start from where the shadow would be darkest. So we want to go from the darkest area, move up into the white, and then sort of blend it out to make that seamless transition. If the difference between the blue, gray, and that white is too strong, go back in with some more white and blend it out with those dabbing motions. Or you can go in and add some white to that gray that you've created to make an intermediary color. If you think the shadow areas aren't dark enough too, just create a darker gray with more blues and blacks and blend that into the darkest points of the cloud to create that stronger shadowy contrast. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Again, a bit boring, so I am going to go back in and do some silhouettes again. This is where the fan brush comes into play. And no worries about mixing colors, because we're just going to use black paint, and we are going to paint some super simple trees. Let's first start with that round brush, and we are going to map out some of those tree trunks. After that, we go in with our fan brush. With a very gentle dabbing motion, we're going to create those leaves by just letting the tips of that brush strand just tap against the canvas. Alternate holding the brush in different directions, horizontally and vertically, and this will help you achieve that pine tree shape. Turning the brush vertically or using the very end little strands makes it easier to do the barest part of the tree, the top. And you just keep going with that until you feel like that tree is nice and full. And then you can go back in at the very end and add with your round brush the shape of those trunks again. And then on top of that, build up more of the leaves. You just got to pick up that fan brush again and continue with that gentle tapping motion. All right, that's done. So I reckon that wasn't too hard. And with that, we are done with part 1. I'll pop up the other 2 exercises in our part 2 video, and well, I hope these methods work for you. Or, you know, if you've got your own cloud painting methods that you'd like to share, feel free to do so in the comments. I love to learn from different people. I love to see different styles, and frankly, this video was born out of trying to teach some friends and some other people how to do some simple and fun paintings, and it was just to, you know, fight that lockdown boredom that everyone seems to be unfortunately feeling. Speaking of boredom, these guys are pretty keen for me to take them out to play now, so keep an eye out for part 2 if you want to see those exercises. They're a little bit more difficult, but they should be fun. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you in part 2.